Now we're going to talk to interesting guest. His name is Dylan Ratigan. I believe he's the host of a show on MSNBC called The Dylan Ratigan Show, which makes sense. Dylan, how are you, man? Welcome to the Young
Very good. Nice to be talking to you. How you been?
Very good, very good. You wrote
Can you believe this mess?
Well, I'm about to ask you about that.
Can you believe this mess?
Well, that's what
Seriously, can you guys believe this mess? I'm asking. Like, if you sit there, you sit in that studio on Wilshire, you know, you got a whole thing, you see you got a little perspective, you have good information, you've got good background, you're seeing the same thing I'm seeing. Can you believe this mess?
Well, you know, Dylan, I was talking about this earlier. I'm a little amazed that we actually have a fight, that we haven't lost on every single issue. Because, you know, the system is deeply corrupt. It's set up wrong so that the politicians get the money from the corporate lobbyists. So, of course, they're going to do the bidding of the corporate lobbyists. It's amazing anybody's on the other side.
But people underestimate the very thing that you guys represent and that this entire dialogue that's expanding in this country represents, which is the very fact that we live at a very unique post-feudal, pre-robot moment in technological development, which gives us the unique ability to deal in information and rearrange information in a way that actually assesses its validity as opposed to its sell-side manipulation or linkage. And as you rearrange the information properly, it becomes much more difficult to perpetuate the corruption that you spoke of, which has existed for, obviously, for as long as there have been people.
Yeah, so I want to, it's funny you said that because today I actually turned on television for news for the first time in like the last probably 10 years. And it's going to seem a bit much, but it was actually your show because I want to know.
You're a guest. You were looking to see who else was in your slot. You were like, who does that guy have? You're like, I should be on today.
No, seriously though, because I wanted to know what was happening with financial reform, and I wasn't getting it online, which is rare, right? So I was like, Dylan's going to cover it, right? So I turned it on, and I actually got the news from you. So, which almost never happens on television. It goes to the point that you were making earlier. But speaking about that, so. What's the latest? You know, what battles have we won today? What battles have we lost today? Because today's an absolutely critical day as the House and the Senate figure out the financial reform.
I want to speak with the preface of the fact that I haven't checked in for 2 hours. And we're in an environment right now, just based on what I am aware of over the previous 12 hours, and as you know, Cenk, better than a lot of people, having worked as much as you have in Washington, that on days like today, shit changes every hour. I don't know. Excuse my language. Okay?
Yeah.
No, so I want to preface that. But with that said, here's what appears to be happening. First and foremost, and most importantly, there's a split in the Democratic Party, and the White House is a problem. Like, if you want the headline, that's the problem. You've got a portion of the Democratic Party that is loyal to Geithner and Summers in the White House, and the White House, at least through the reporting that the Huffington Post is doing, that I'm doing, that I'm getting through other direct and indirect but reliable sources, both, and confirming inside and out, is that there's a very clear split inside of the Democratic Party where one constituency tends toward an assessment that is more similar to one that you guys might make or that I might make or anybody, a kindergartner might make, anybody, right? And that's half of the Democrats in Senate. And then you also have probably half a dozen Republicans, traditional conservatives, stay out of my bank, stay out of my bedroom, sort of Eisenhower conservative types that are similarly resistant. But what's going on is between the White House, which is apparently on an assault, along with Chris Dodd, on shareholder rights, which is disastrous. This is totally unexpected, is the invasion on shareholder rights from the White House and Chris Dodd. Think about it like this. If the Young Turks is a publicly traded company, and you two are running it, and the rest of us buy shares in your company, and then we decide you guys are just all spending time on the boat and on the plane and all this. You've gone public with the Young Turks. You don't really care. You call in.
Sounds pretty good so far.
Yeah,
right.
So far I like this story.
So we see you guys on the boat all the time. And we're like, we got to get new management in there. These guys are old Turks now. They're out. Okay, it's been 20 years. Need new Turks. Right? Big meeting.
Right.
But we can't get in there, and that's a natural balance. But what Chris Dodd and the White House is doing right now is they're attempting to make it much more difficult for shareholders to represent that voice in the management of a corporation. So the rule used to be that you had to be a group of 3% of the shareholders as a group. We had to have a meeting and get 3% of us say, listen, we want new directors. We want the right to nominate new directors. We want the right to have the quarterly meetings. We want a seat at the table. We want to say what we think. We're going to buy in to this company, right? A group at 3%. The new law, as advocated by Senator Dodd, is one shareholder with 5%, which may not sound like that much.
Yeah, but it's probably really hard to get 3.
General Electric, which is the parent company of NBC and MSNBC where I work, okay? Its largest shareholders, like Vanguard and BlackRock, these big mutual funds where people put their retirement, their 401k money, all the money that people don't see that comes through the paycheck system that doesn't go to the government, their biggest holding in GE is like 3.8%. And so there's not even a group of shareholders that could get together to have a voice at GE. Like there's nobody's at one shareholder 5%. It's an irrational economic position in a portfolio theory where you're harvesting index money from billions of people and distributing it.
Dylan, let me ask you this question because it leads to it's one question. It's going to lead to the second question. Well, first of all, so who's influencing? And that's the question I always have. Who's influencing Chris Dodd on this?
Geithner and Summers. Right, so you got the White House through the Treasury and Geithner and Larry Summers influencing Dodd, saying, "Hey, why don't you do this?"
Why?
There's a campaign coming up, and 40% of all corporate donation comes from the financial industry. And I believe this is my opinion. I can't say this. I can't report this per se. So I want to make that very clear.
Sure.
But my opinion is that Rahm and the election team are looking at fundraising going into November, and they're just saying, let's keep it nice and easy.
And get credit for some reform while not
get
really
a headline
putting
on
significant
reform.
pressure.
We'll keep the money coming in. Nobody really understands that most of the P&L at the bank comes through leverage and risk accumulated against a leveraged asset base, where it's just this collection. It's madness, and the spreads on credit default swaps sold in the over-the-counter market are ridiculous. For nothing. They take what was a standard contract. Imagine we have a standard contract to do anything, to deliver a hamburger.
Right.
And then imagine I change the date and call it a custom contract, sell it off the exchange privately, mark it up.
Yeah.
And I called Cenk up. I'm like, "Hey, Cenk, I got a custom deal for you, bro."
That sounds good. How do I get it?
Yeah.
You want it? I'm gonna change the date.
Right, but you want
whatever
that
day it is we meet. I'm gonna write that down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a business.
I'm
being dramatic, but the point is, there's a bit, and that's the economics of both leveraging that asset base and manipulating the flow of that risk accumulation with the knowledge that the risk you're getting paid to accumulate you actually can't bear is brilliant.
When was the let's talk the politics of it briefly, and granted your
for sure. I just want to be very clear. I want to, because I have information because I work on this, and I also have a point of view, and I want to separate those two.
No,
they don't exist, but just I don't want to mix them up.
You've been clear. Don't worry. From a political point of view, when is the last time there was a showdown between the White House wing of the Democratic Party and the more progressive wing of the Democratic Party that the more progressive wing won?
Oh, my goodness. I mean, you have to go back many decades. And I'm not even suggesting that happens now, by the way.
Right. I mean, but if the White House is backing this one effort on this battle, and Cenk was saying that we like that there's a fight and we don't know how it's going to turn out, I mean, it seems like I think we know how it's going to turn out.
Well, I think you may feel like you have a sense of how this is going to turn out.
Yeah.
But this is the beginning.
Right.
Because the biggest problem that we've had as a country is really illiteracy, financial illiteracy, just conceptually capitalist illiteracy, if you will.
By the way, just this conversation with you has made me feel financially illiterate. So,
well, it's because they've developed a complexity system to hide risk and transfer risk, and also accounting misrepresentation. Think about who owns think about when you drive around Los Angeles. All those buildings are not buildings; they're data points of debt. Those aren't buildings.
Uh-huh.
That's not a building that you're driving by, Anna, on Wilshire.
I'm going to use that line, and I'd like to think that line's going to get me laid.
That is $1.5 million in debt, is what that is. Okay. Uh-huh. And we created an economy that was predicated on the simple concept of credit speculation, where I used modern technology to assess the profile, like I would try to do, what movies do you like, all the things they're trying to do. And I'd say, okay, what are the chances that a guy 35, 25, a gal 38, a guy 65, a gal 18, whatever it may be, all the little computer stuff. What are the chances she pays it back? They're like, I'd say 90%, 94%. They stopped checking all lending and just were betting credit.
Yeah.
The only game was who can bet the biggest credit. Well, the only way you can expand the betting pool is to inflate the price of all those buildings, because the most valuable thing we have as a country outside of our natural resources and our land, which is multiples in value relative to anything we have ever built in this continent, right? But the most valuable physical asset we have is our real estate.
Well, you know,
and the banks own it, but we're funding it. It's crazy.
That's a good transition to the article you wrote today, which I thought was very interesting. We're talking to Dylan Ratigan from MSNBC, and he wrote, "They keep stealing, why keep paying?" Referring to the mortgages in this country. And what do you think people should do if they're underwater in their mortgage, if they owe more than the house is worth now?
I think that what you have to understand, what the contract you've entered, and maybe you can be helpful with this, Jen, going forward even. But I think it's important to understand the agreement that you have made in order to fully understand the options that you have over the life of the agreement, whatever it may be. And if you don't fundamentally understand the agreement that you have made, then you don't appropriately make the best decisions. That was my starting point with this. And the agreement that is made when you purchase a house, unlike, and you know this, unlike another agreement to accumulate debt, let's say for a student loan, for your education, a student loan, as many know, follows you after you get out of school no matter what you do. Change jobs, change towns, anything, right?
Right.
A mortgage loan, you actually post the piece of real estate to the bank as collateral. It's why they have the assessor, all that whole ritual of the transaction. And you say, listen, I'm good for $100,000, $50,000, $500,000, $1 million, whatever the real estate agreement is. I'm good for this amount of money. I'll pay you back, like rent, right?
So you're saying that that's a contract that's very specific to that piece of real estate.
And so I'll go further. In that contract, mathematically, let's say the typical mortgage in this really sort of hyper-stimulated, subsidized housing market is 5%. Okay? And let's say that the interest charged to you as a fee for the student loan for you to go to school is 3%. Well, there's a reason every month mathematically why you pay more money on your mortgage.
Because it's
and the reason you pay more money is because the debt does not follow you. You have entered an agreement where you say, I'll pay a higher fee to the bank in advance as a markup for the potential risk that I may decide to post the house to them as collateral and move on.
So that's part and parcel of the contract. So
that's as sure as your monthly payment.
There's no morality or any issue of ethics or anything. If you walk away from that contract, you say, look, this is part of the contract. I'm giving you the house. Okay, that's
Jenk, you want to do a deal? I want to buy this crazy shack that you've built up in Topanga Canyon. Okay? I want to hang out and enjoy myself, okay?
Okay.
I'll give you $500,000 for it.
Deal.
But if I'm not good for the money, the shack is yours and I'm out of here.
Well, then that's the contract. I'm not going to follow you
around
I'm
not
wherever
signing
you go.
that. You're going to run it. You're going to leave me with that. Or you're like, all right, I'll sign it.
That's it.
That's up to you.
All right. So now if these guys walk away and say, look, this was the contract. That's your house. That's what we had agreed to. That makes a lot of sense. What happens to the banks?
The banks, the fraud that's being perpetuated by the Obama administration that is the most fundamental and most disastrous fraud is the banks right now think about who owns remember, drive by all the buildings in L.A.
Data points of debt.
Data points of debt. Who owns that debt? The bank has extended that credit to some custodian. Me, I bought this building. Jenk bought a building, whatever it may be. But some percentage of the equity, in some cases most of the value of that building, in some cases very little, in some cases none, is actually owned by a third party, which is the banking institutions. Right?
Right.
So if you stop paying on that, so right now the banks carry as an asset base, they record a number. They say, I own this bill. I own 85% of this building on Wilshire. That's worth $3.4 million. I own this strip mall in Oklahoma. That's worth $10 million. They've got a list of shit they own. Excuse my language. Right? And then they say, we own all this stuff. That's worth $1 billion or $500 billion. It's Citigroup or whatever it is, right? And then they are audited. They were stress tested by Geithner in the Obama administration in 2008. And they said, okay, yes, they're worth $500 billion. Okay?
Right.
So now the banks, with the knowledge that they're worth $500 billion, decide, okay, we're going to borrow $30 for every dollar of that $500 billion, and we're going to start to accumulate the risk that all these people in America won't be able to pay their bills, which is what the bet is. Remember, the whole game is a credit casino, where the fees for the gambling go to the house. The house can change its game in halftime, and you just have to pay your bills and shut up, because the bet is you're going to pay your bills. That's what the bet is.
Right.
But what we're gambling on is whether you're going to pay your bills.
And if you don't,
then we lose the bet.
So the banks lose the bet, and
so the banks lose the bet. You stop paying your bills. They stop accumulating that monthly income from that bet, and all of a sudden that $500 billion that has been stress tested by Geithner turns out to actually only be worth $200 billion.
So that myth and that whole...
It's an accounting fraud. Until we address the accounting standards issue, which is that we have a massive accounting fraud in this country where the banks misrepresent the core value of all the real estate.
Right.
And because they misrepresent it, then they lever it at 30 to 1 and start to accumulate risk that people won't pay their gym membership or won't pay their motorcycle payment, or any credit payment that might exist is purely a casino based on demographics, predicated on the belief that most people will pay over time.
So Dylan, I want to ask you one last question about that. We're talking to Dylan Ratigan from MSNBC, and he wrote this Huffington Post article called "They Keep Stealing, Why Keep Paying." We already sent it out through our Twitter account. You should check that out. It's very interesting. And check the links, too, because great information in the links.
The point is to try to be a vehicle for information. If you disagree with me, that's fine. Look at what's underneath there. Think, what do you think? You know?
Exactly. So the final question, Dylan, is, okay, it's a myth that they've created, Geithner, et cetera, and we're going to destroy that myth.
It's an accounting fraud.
Right. We're going to get rid of that
allowing the
banks
to rent. They're charging a massive rent for the use of all the objects. Think of it like that.
So
from motorcycles to cars to houses.
So if you get rid of that accounting fraud, then the banks fall apart. Now, why is that a good thing? That's the last question.
Why is the banks falling apart a good thing?
Yes.
Because right now we have an unlimited state-funded banking system where the private sector controls the custody of that asset and the deployment of that asset, but the risk of all the non-payment for that asset is transferred to the state, to the taxpayer. You can either have a state-run bank where there's no accounting standards and the state gives loans directly. I'm not advocating it. I'm saying that's a structure. Or you can have a privately run bank where the capital is controlled privately and the risk stays with the person making the loans. So they have the discipline not to overextend themselves so they can accumulate the fee income from making lots of loans. But if you allow the capital manager to transfer the risk of default of non-payment either to the shareholder or the bondholder and to be too big to fail, and then allow them to use those two things like electric wires to transfer the risk from themselves to the government, their only incentive is to try to lend as much money as humanly possible. Because the more they can lend, the more they make. And ultimately what they're facilitating is a massive hangover of people who own $180,000 houses who are now trapped in houses that are worth $60,000.
So the longer we go...
And they can't change jobs. And so right now the question is, do we want the disruption of being honest about the reform? Because I'd like to say one more thing if I could. There's the homeowner aspect of this, Cenk, and then there's also the pension fund manager, mutual fund manager, PIMCO aspect of this, which is all of the retirement accounts of all the teachers and policemen and all of the retirees that are managed through state and mass pensions in this country, which is a huge percent, judges, down the list. Their money was invested in the bets that people would pay their bills. So the way the bankers funded their betting was by going to the pension fund manager in California or New York or wherever, Texas, Florida, North Carolina, and say, I can give you AAA the same as the government bond, except for it yields 20 or 15%, way more. And your politicians want to spend more than they actually have. And we can juice your numbers, and you're inside out on your pension to begin with. So the pension fund manager, just like the German that was a yield hog that bought that piece of crap Goldman was selling a little while back that they're in trouble for, is just on a long list of yield hogs because you've got profligate spending state politicians and hollowed out pension funds. So then you have pension fund managers chasing as yield hogs, which are easy bait for sell-side bankers offering credit speculation as a long position on the potential that their own pension fund managers will be able to pay their bills. And the bankers are just charging rent to facilitate that wheel.
Right.
And it's an act of madness. And we have the opportunity, because we have the technology, to finally step forward and address it.
All right. Well,
as a group.
Well, let's hope that we begin to do that over the next 2 days, and everybody check out this article by Dylan because it's got great information on it. Dylan Ratigan, thank you so much for joining us on the Young Turks.
Now, listen, I'm a fan of you guys. I appreciate your support, and I'll talk to you soon.